But there was another program after Dark Side of the Ring this past week on Vice, which was a one-shot TV special. And we said we were going to watch it because it was the MLW Fight Land show where Jacob Fatu and Alexander Hammerstone had that's been their big match that they've been building in MLW for, God, I don't know how long, a year and a half now or whatever. And I like both those guys from working with them back in 2019. And I thought, well, I'm going to see what they put together. And so we watched that, and I have thoughts, and I really wanted to like. I'm not saying I didn't like the match. I like both those guys, and I like their match. But boy, it was a nice picture, but the frame was lacking. The ambiance, the atmosphere, it didn't help them at all that they were in the ECW arena, or what do they call it now? The 2300 arena in Philadelphia. It didn't help. I know they've redone the place, and they've supposedly put in a lot of improvements, and there's absolutely no way that you could have disimproved that building. A tornado went through there one time and did $6 million worth of improvements. That is the worst building for wrestling that I've ever been in my life. That's the worst building I've ever been in my life at a major city. That shithole building in Laranja, Louisiana was worse than this one, but you would expect that from Laranja, Louisiana. But in an actual city, that building, the overflowing toilets in the bathroom, the lack of air conditioning, the not slum neighborhood, but literally crime-ridden neighborhood. It's not far from downtown Philadelphia, and all the roads to the building are not even paved, or at least as of 10 years ago when Ring of Honor was doing TV in that shithole, they weren't. You find needles and drug paraphernalia out in the parking lot in the back of the building, and that's before the wrestlers get there. I've never hated a place worse in my life to go into than that building. And so they're in Philadelphia, and it's all mostly flat seating. It doesn't look like an arena. The crowd has seen everything in the world there, and there's not many of them. It was just a blasé atmosphere. And honestly, and I've worked on that program, and that's why I was going to say I never did Philadelphia, but I did color commentary for them in Chicago twice, in New York 2 different shows, and in Milwaukee. And Milwaukee was a disaster because the building was a shithole, and they didn't do a proper site survey. New York was what New York is. It's a small little place. But Chicago, and I talked about this at the time on the podcast, was a real arena, one of those old-fashioned arenas that seated about 2,000 people that in the 50s, in the Fred Kohler days, it was one of the places in Chicagoland that had regular small wrestling shows with 1 or 2 of the stars and some of the local guys, like the Rainbow Arena and the Marigold Arena. They packed the place. It looked good on television because it was real bleachers going up instead of a flat building like most independent wrestling takes place these days. Half or more of the audience, English was a second language. They were Hispanic, which is why they had a heavy lucha influence on the show, but those people made noise and they were a crazy audience. And the atmosphere of this taping from Rich Bikini, who I enjoyed working with and who does a great job and is a very underrated wrestling announcer. He and MSL did color, Mr. St. Laurent. And from the start, when they opened the program, the audio mix was dodgy on the announcer stand-up. They were in front of a green screen with a generic, logo background in front of them. They're in a building. They're there live. Do the live stat. I used to have a problem with when I was doing the color. They wouldn't do, because they were shooting 4 episodes in the same night, but they wouldn't do individual opens with the announcers in the people, in the arena, in real time. So it felt like that. We'd do them pre-tapes and standing up in front of a green screen. And it took part of the live aspect out of it. And I'm telling you all the things that I thought were wrong with the show, so everybody doesn't say I sugarcoat anything, and then I'm going to get to what I liked. And then they go to the opening match, and it's a 4-way, and immediately they're doing everything that every other wrestling promotion does, but the TV show production doesn't look as good. And that's where I couldn't believe they didn't do an entire 1-hour special on this match and have locker room interviews and have a lengthy history piece and even a music video. Does anybody do those these days where they set some highlights to a decent song and make it build up your two biggest names and make it look different? Instead, we started with a 4-way this was for, what was it for? Fuck, I even forgot.
It was for one of the belts. It was for a title.
For one of the belts. There were no ring intros or entrances. They just started off in the ring. Everybody shook hands with Tajiri, who looks like a middle-aged school janitor. Because
everyone in Japan you associate with a school for some reason.
Okay, a middle-aged fucking gas station janitor.
That's better.
He looks like a middle-aged janitor who would get a job janitoring anywhere. You got Myron Reed, a guy named Arez, a guy named Aramis, and Tajiri. And I understand why they use the luchadors, because they have a heavily Hispanic audience. And they're on BN Sports, which caters to the Hispanic audience. Do you need, just because Tajiri, apparently he didn't mean much in Philadelphia because they weren't beating the door down with axes to get in this building because Tajiri was on the card. How old would Tajiri be now since he was over with the ECW audience 24 and 25 years ago?
He is 51 years old.
Exactly. A 4-way with bullshit phony choreography like every other 4-way from every other company. A lousy atmosphere in a shithole building. It looks low rent and the people weren't with it. And did you see the filthy floor? That the building can neither paint their floor nor can MLW roll out some fucking carpet for a network television, cable television, national cable television program. So this was every indie 4-way match. Sloppy work that they tried to make up for with umpteen dives out of the ring and no story and just a complete mess. And that was the first 15, 20 minutes of the show. I don't know what their talent roster is like right now, but if they had a good single match or tag match with guys that could work, I would have loved to have seen that. Because this match just made it look like any other wrestling promotion today, doing nothing different with guys doing sloppy moves for no reason, and it wouldn't end, and it was low budget. And I know not everybody has Tony Khan's money so they can do this big-time production, but don't put low-budget shit in the ring when you're shooting at low budget. The OVW TV show that I used to do was low budget, and we knew that, but we put good shit in the ring, so you couldn't fucking tell. I tried to do the same thing with Ring of Honor when they gave us very little budget. And then Tajiri won over all of their, I guess, their regular guys and everybody that's not eligible for AARP. Tajiri won the match. So if you have any thoughts, you can give them, but I'm not even really asking you to chip in on this, because why?
I started dozing off because it was on right after Dark Side. I figured, let me get this all out of the way now, knowing we are going to record today. But I started dozing off, and then to stay awake, I started doing stuff on my computer with it on in the background, looking at it back and forth. It wasn't a match I like, not a style I like. Sick of 4-ways. The show opened with a fucking 4-way. It's just not for me. I agree with you. I tuned in to watch one match. Don't force feed me something else if I'm there for that and you're using this as your one big chance to get some exposure, because MLW has very little exposure other than, other than the PR. They have no exposure whatsoever. I would have made this whole thing about Hammerstone and Fatu. Who are they? Why are they important? How did they win their belts? How dominant have they been?
Yeah.
Instead, it was just all of a sudden, it's time for this match.
Well, they actually could have done both. They could have done what you said. Who are they? Why are they dominant? How did they win their belts, etc., personality, interviews, and still had another match on, because the next segment, I swear to God, I thought we were listening to a fan's podcast, because they did a halftime show. And again, I know the concept that they were selling was big fights and big news, right? And that's one thing I love about MLW. I love their terminology. And Court Bauer is behind this. This is no, seriously, he is. I love the terminology. League officials, fight schedule, sporting phrases, tale of the tapes.
Okay, in terms of on-air phrases that he uses, absolutely. I will give you that.
Yes, and I'm not Court's behind it, but I'm saying that the announcers use it, the graphics, and that it is a sporting feel of a show. They do that right. But then, instead of presenting, like I said, maybe a match that you could get into one talent who you could put over before you go to the main event, instead of this halftime show where they're doing wrestling news from around the world, that's where they could have done the background on Hammerstone and Fatuit, etc., because what their halftime show was to present big news in the world of wrestling. Okay, I haven't ever heard this girl's name. I've seen this girl's name written. She does interviews. I guess she started as a girl that did interviews on the internet, and now some wrestling promotions have hired her. I've seen it written, but I've never heard it pronounced, so I thought her name was Alicia Atout. Atout.
That's what I thought, too.
She introduced herself as Alicia Atout, and I couldn't stop laughing. I don't know why it struck me so fucking sideways funny, but Alicia Atout. And maybe she's Canadian, as somebody mentioned. I don't know.
Before you disparage her any further, I want to say, I thought she was great. She's really good.
I didn't say she was bad. It just tickled me about Atout. Alicia Atout. But she had a panel with her who I wrote down their names as she introduced them, because no one has ever heard of these people ever before. Raj Giri, Rajgiri, Andreas Hale, and Emilio Sparks were her panel. Apparently, they do fan podcasts about wrestling. And they were there on the panel in studio, but via satellite, they had none other
satellite
than Uncle Dave Meltzer's disembodied floating head. Because the shot was from his collar to the top of his head. It was a giant close-up that they would go to intermittently. But I said, who are these people? This had to be, it seemed like a 20-minute segment. It had to be 10 minutes. But does any wrestling fan want to hear other fans talk about wrestling? These are hosts of fan podcasts, right? They've never been involved in the wrestling industry, except for Uncle Dave, who's his own wrestling industry. But the other ones, and then they're not talking about MLW. This is their first, and as we know so far, only hour of national cable television to do this show, and they put in 10 minutes of news on other companies. Alicia Atout asked the panel about whether they thought the WWE is going to be for sale. And they go to Dave, who shaved with a broken bottle, apparently. He got a prison shave with the fucking... Somebody sharpened the edge of a shiv and held the fucking bedpan up in front of him so he could see a reflection to where he could fucking take the shiv and scrape his face. Either that or he had gig marks, but he's getting juice upside down. I don't know.
I just almost spit my drink out.
I'm sorry if I'm making you waste your beverages here. But each of the unknown experts weighed in on whether the WWE is for sale. And I wrote, why are they talking about another company? Why do they think people want to hear these unknown people's opinions? Why are they wasting their national cable time? Then they talked about who AEW might sign next. And I wrote, no one on this panel's opinion is worth shit. Who are they?
Watch the next match. That should be the answer. Watch the next match.
We can only hope. So they spent 10 minutes of their national TV debut with 4 marks talking about other companies and Dave Meltzer popping in for random remarks with a bloody face. And then the last of the segment, they spent marking out over how great Will Ospreay is and didn't show a goddamn lick of video of how great Will Ospreay is. Okay.
I believe he's coming to MLW and they couldn't license footage in time, would be my guess.
Goddamn, nobody has ever shot home video of him wrestling anywhere that would have been better than these 4 unknown people speaking about how great he is.
I fell asleep shortly after Dave's appearance because I hate to say this, but I fell asleep. My last thoughts were, I don't think Dave knows how to shave. And then my next thought was, I know how I shave. And I know how sometimes you want to be meticulous and get things done. And I can't see Dave being a relaxed shaver. I could just see him like attacking his face with the blade. I can't see him standing there and like, oh, quickly
have to get this done.
And it just looked like he cut off half his chin. I don't know what happened. But that's when I fell asleep. And I rejoined the broadcast the next morning.
All right. Well, now
I figured, just to let you know, I'm really getting tired. I want to see this main event. I literally want to see this match. If I go to bed, if I just embrace the sleep, tomorrow I'll be fresh and I'll get to watch this big main event. I didn't realize that the crowd still wouldn't be fresh when I watched it, but yeah.
I actually stayed up and watched it as it happened and then caught up on Roads to the Rotten the next morning. But anyway, on this television program, after the fans talking about other companies' business, then a guy in a horror movie mask and his stooges went into a room and started fighting with a bunch of people, and a guy in a lucha mask closed the door behind all these people and flipped the deadbolt, and then the actor from Lucha Underground, whatever his fucking name was, said something about, we're not going to have anybody spoil the title match tonight. So basically, they've locked all the people who could interfere in the title match in a room, unbeknownst to the people locked in the room because they're fighting. So it's going to be fair. They're going to keep it fair because everybody's locked in a room in the back. Number one, I've been in that building. You can put your foot through any wall in that place without even trying hard. And secondly, I wrote, they're making it as hard as possible for me to want to watch this main event.
That's the match I want to see. What's going on in the room?
Why did they have to gimmick this up further?
I missed this.
And put that, yes, and it was completely unbelievable. The way it was worse than when they fucking locked the Japanese guys in the goddamn dressing room on the Clash of Champions in Cleveland.
What? I don't even think it was them, was it? It was going to be the Road Warriors in Tenru. Did they lock Sting, the JYD, and Michael Hayes? Was that?
Yeah, whoever it was, they locked up in the locker room in Cleveland. Anyway, so then finally we get the match, and it's no disqualification. They still had to gimmick it up. And they didn't really need to, but I'll accept it in this because both these guys, Hammerstone has been a heel, or at least he was when I was there. And I believe this is a kind of a heel matchup, but Hammerstone is the nominal babyface because Fatu is a monster. And Joseph Samael came out with Fatu, the almighty Sheik, who was working with him when I was there. I don't know who the guy in the horror movie mask was. They stuck him in the Contra group somehow. But it was title versus title. Hammerstone won the national openweight tournament. I called those matches. So that was 2 years ago. And I called the match where Fatu won the world title from Tom Lawler. So they've both been champions for a couple of years. And they're by far the two most credible guys in the company. I will say also the ring announcer, I don't know who he was, but he looked like a 80-year-old drunk homeless bum or a Professor Irwin Corey, if that might not be too old a reference.
I thought that was good, though, because I'm sick of these young, smiling, everyone's just so happy. I want an old, crusty ring announcer.
Well, this guy will comb your hair and button your fucking collar and tighten your tie up. Fucking Jesus Christ, he looked like goddamn, what was the professor's name in Back to the Future?
Bill Apter.
No.
Dr. Emmett Brown.
Bill Apter?
I was trying to pop you.
Christopher Lloyd is where I was going with Bill Apter. He doesn't need to comb his hair. Anyway, both guys were out intense. They had their game faces on. Hammerstone is jacked. Fatu is a beast. And for once, Fatu was a slightly smaller guy. Now, he's lost some weight. He's dropped weight on purpose since I've seen him in person last. But not often would he be manhandled, but Hammerstone did it. And, well, you tell me Fatu's a natural. All his shit looks great, the way he moves, the aggression, the facials. And you can just tell, I've mentioned what an incredible worker he is. I said this on the program when I called this match and I brought it to his attention. He didn't even know he did it. But there was one time he was having a match on one of their TV tapings I did, and he went for that springboard moonsault. And as he was going over backwards, I swear to God, unconsciously, he saw that he was going to land on the fucking guy that he was moonsaulting. And he lifted a leg and landed on his left knee and his right foot with his knee up in just the perfect place so that he wouldn't potato the guy on the moonsault. And he didn't even realize he'd done it. He's just a natural worker, and the way he moves around the fucking ring is impeccable. And it was a big man smash mouth match, that you don't see anymore because these guys take themselves seriously as badasses. Fatu did that moonsault off the guardrail barefoot onto Hammerstone, gave him a pile driver on the apron. I don't know why they did that one. But anyway, what'd you think of Fatu in this one before we go any further with the etc.?
Well, he's great. He's a main event kind of guy. And he's, like you said, a natural in the ring. Moves really great. The spot with the moonsault off the, he was holding on to the pillar and he was standing on the barricade. While impressive, I didn't like the fact that Hammerstone's standing there for 30 seconds.
Hammerstone had to wait. Well,
Yeah.
it wasn't 30 seconds. But
Well, you know what I'm saying. It wasn't 30 seconds. It was probably 5 very, very long seconds.
5 very, very long ones.
But no.
One Mississippi, too.
But other than that, which is all things considered a minor criticism, I thought Fatu looked great. I thought Hammerstone looked great. These two guys look like main event guys.
Well, and then Fatu, and again, the no DQ, they didn't spend 20 years on the floor or just do everything, but they did rattle a little bit of furniture around. But Fatu did the coast-to-coast drop kick with the chair, which for his size is ridiculous. And then they were Hammerstone was making a big comeback because they were headed to another break spot, and he hit a bicycle kick. And if you slow-mode this, I don't know how he didn't break the ankle, because he's 270 pounds, and he came down on his left foot. And the reason why I hate those type of leaping kicks and shit is because in those wrestling rings, and they're bouncing and guys are running on them, and when you land with all of your weight on one foot, either a knee or an ankle can go. And in this case, it was the ankle. He sprained it badly because it went sideways. You can go back and slow-mo it. I'm surprised it didn't snap. And he finished the rest of the match with that ankle. We've seen the pictures of it on social media since then, giant and black and blue or whatever. But they go to the break again. They come back, and then now Fatu's cooking, and he hit the Samoan drop, and he almost missed a senton off the top rope. He got him, but he almost overshot him. But then he hit a dive through the ropes like Darby Allin, where he just launched himself and body blocked the guy. But instead of Darby's 150 pounds, this is 260 or whatever. Hammerstone hit a dive at his size with a bad ankle and a missile drop kick off the top rope that knocked Fatu ass over tea kettle. They stood exhausted and wailed away at each other, and that's where it started going too long, because I like a good 1-2 when it looks like a Rocky movie. But this spot has been prostituted, as we've talked about, where guys just stand and trade. And even though they were selling each one of them, they went a little long. And then finally, Joseph Samael interfered, and Fatu pulled out a table, slid it in the ring, and said he was actually strong enough to pull it out and slide it in and set it up. And put him, and this is a callback, as the kids say, because when he first debuted, they had Fatu beat the fuck out of a guy, and they were stretching him out, and he just jumped up out of nowhere and moonsaulted the guy on the stretcher, which I thought was a cool spot. But he puts Hammerstone on the table, covers him up with the flag. I know he's Contra, but he's also a beast. I don't know if he'd have that much eye for detail. But then he moonsaulted Hammerstone through it and got a 2 count. Okay, I'll buy that. Are they selling? No. Hammerstone popped up right away and made his final comeback, power slam, modified F5, because I'm pretty sure with the bad ankle he couldn't do his regular finish. 1, 2, 3. They got to that point, and I liked the match, and I liked both those guys. But then they got to that end point, and the finish came off flat, and it was a what? They could have done exactly what they did if Hammerstone had moved off of the table and Fatu had moonsaulted through the table, and then immediately Hammerstone had hit his finish. Boom, 1, 2, 3. I would have bought that so much more than him getting moonsaulted through the table, popping back up without selling it. Yes, to show that he's strong, but still, now just boom, come back 2 moves, 1, 2, 3. They lost the momentum just ever so much there at the end. So if they could have tightened that up, move on the moonsault, pick him up and hit your fucking finish, 1, 2, 3, I think the finish would have been perfect. But as it was, these two ought to be on national television. They're grown men and they can do their shit. And if they had a high dollar production, it would look a whole lot better. And if they had a bigger building with more people in it, it would have looked a whole lot better yet. And if we hadn't had to sit through a table discussion by 4 fucking willy-nilly marks about other people's companies, it would have been better yet.
I thought that, there were moments I didn't like. I hated when all of a sudden the trading blows. I've been ranting about it on the shows lately, and there they are doing it towards the end of the match. I think, by and large, if you took this match, as it were, and put it on an AEW show, the people there would have been reacting and really been into it. In this case, it was kind of like when Vic Steamboat won the title from Tony Atlas in ICW. Actually, no, because they had a big pop. I mean, that was the problem. They had this match, this big moment, the big title change after whatever you said, a couple of years for both guys. There were some fans celebrating, but no one seemed to really be treating this match like a major match. Maybe I'm wrong. Because again, the audio did suck. The opening audio, you couldn't even hear the announcer. So maybe the audio was not picking up the room. And I did see some people cheering, but it didn't.
It's Philadelphia. You have to take a chainsaw to a baby to get people to really shit themselves because of all the things they've seen. If I had unlimited funds to start any wrestling promotion anywhere in the world, put it on any television network, and hire anybody to be in it, the one place that I would not go is Philadelphia. Second in line would probably be Florida, but they have seen...
Yeah, you ain't lying.
Well, Philadelphia, because they've seen every possible thing you can see, and they're the smartest fans, and at the same time, a lot of them the most blasé fans, because unless you do full-on garbage and kill somebody, you can't move them. They've seen everything. I wouldn't go to Florida because they've had free wrestling promotions throwing the doors open for the past 15 years at almost every show. Come in, please, for free. We'll pay you. So, but yeah, the response, no, if you if you put Jacob Fatu on WWE programming or AEW programming or any programming with any people and any production value whatsoever, and you smash him over for 6 weeks or so, the people would be ready to buy anything he does. And Hammerstone is a classic example of he's a modern Lex Luger, and that may not sound like a compliment, but it is, because as we've mentioned, Lex got it finally in 89, 90 matches with Steamboat, matches with Flair. If you had that Lex Luger around today looking like that at that size and can work like that, he'd be a megastar. It's just the field was so much more crowded then. And Hammerstone has more personality than Lex did because he's not as uncomfortable being himself and doing what he's doing. So there they are. But I liked the match, but it was a wonderful portrait in a crummy frame. How's that?
The other thing is the commentary. The one guy just kept telling us what a big match this was over and over while we're watching the match, and then the fans don't react like it's a big match. So I don't know.
Well, also, I think Rich and MSL, and for the audio mix especially, and I've mentioned audio mixes are the worst part about wrestling. Their voices are too similar. You couldn't tell who was responding to who in some cases. And I thought that was a little disorienting verbally as well. Or
felt like watching Broadway boxing on SNY.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, someone in New York knows what I'm talking about.
Well, there you go. Well, somebody in New York, we're calling you. Anyway, but we wish Hammerstone well in recovering from his sprained ankle. And, you know, I'm thinking maybe as he recovers, he's obviously at home. He's got his foot up on a pillow. Maybe he's icing his ankle, whatever. He's probably, you know, wanting to eat as healthy as possible to make sure that he comes back in as good a condition as if he has to miss any time. And, of course, part of that, when you're sitting around with your foot up or your ankle sprained, you need to eat a good breakfast, don't you? Don't you, Brian?
I would think so, especially when you're laid up and injured.
And maybe while he's out, if he has to miss any appreciable time wrestling, Hammerstone can become their mascot. You know, like those other cereal companies, they always had mascots. They were sugar pushers to kids, what they were, you wascally wabbit or Count Chocula. Well, we need to have Alexander Hammerstone extolling the virtues of the healthiest cereal on earth, Magic Spoon. What do you think? Would he be good to push Magic Spoon? Would he do the promos like, if you don't eat Magic Spoon, I will decimate you with the Nightmare Pendulum? Or he'll just bicycle kick you and break his own leg. Regardless. Nevertheless, I was trying to get some help for that one, but I'll just move on. Folks, if you're trying to eat better, not eat the unhealthy carbs and sugar and junk, and you want to have a nice breakfast, but you don't want to eat all that stuff, go to the folks at Magic Spoon. The amazing flavors you love without all the bad stuff. 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, 140 calories a serving. Keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, high-octane, whatever. Build your own box. Now they've got all kinds of flavors. The cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, cinnamon, cookies and cream, maple waffle. Somebody was retweeting they have even more flavors now, and they have not updated their copy. So we got to check in on that. But you can pick your own box. You can build your own box. Build your own custom bundle. Just go to magicspoon.com/Jim. Pick out all these delicious, indulgent flavors. Try them or get them again if they're your favorites, and use the promo code Jim at checkout to save $5 off. Remember about the 100% happiness guarantee. If you're not tickled shitless, they will give you your money back, no questions asked. If you don't, for any reason, if you're not happy, if you don't like the cereal, they'll refund your money. If you don't like the amount of your tax refund check, they'll refund your money. If you don't like your wife's blowjobs or lack thereof, they'll refund your money.
Not in the spot. Come on.
It says if you're not happy for any reason. Oh, you mean just about the cereal?
Reasons involving the cereal.
If you're not happy for any reasons involving the cereal, they'll give you your money back. But if you don't like the gum job from old Emma there, it's your own fault. You'll have to pay for it.
Gums.
Yeah, the gum job.
All right. Jesus.
From their devoted wives. If you're a devoted wife who's given your husband gum jobs, order him Magic Spoon. He won't complain as much. Anyway, get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal. Are you editing all of these out? Get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/Jim and use the code Jim to save $5 on your order. We thank Magic Spoon for sponsoring this episode, the final episode under their sponsorship.
It's a fantastic cereal. We all like it.
It's a great cereal.
Jace Nakarado was telling me the other day he just ordered a whole bunch more. He loves it. Everyone involved with the show loves it. Everyone we've turned Magic Spoon onto. We've turned onto Magic Spoon. Yes. They love it.
Yes. They've all got smiles so wide they got stretch marks on their lips. Magic Spoon.
Okay, good. I was afraid where you're going to go there again.
What are you talking about? I'm just saying they're happy. They're smiling.
Good.
They're contented. Good for them.
Keep smiling, Magic Spoon.